Right, well, welcome to this week's episode of Business Unzit, where I am joined by Lesley-Anne, and we are talking all about dementia, in particular in the workplace. Before we get into it, do you want to just talk to us about your career and where your interest in dementia came?
Yeah, sure. So I started out in sales and marketing. Then I went into fundraising, launched the appeal for Chestnut Tree House, and then went on to lead the fundraising team at St Barnabas. Then moved to the hospitals, so um, Worthing and then Chichester, and ran Love Your Hospital charity there. And then I went on to be fundraising director at Guildcare. And obviously, they have many dementia services, which I became very interested in. So I decided to educate myself in dementia. So I did two diplomas, and then in 2018, obviously everything was becoming very tricky with COVID and everything. So 2019, and so it's then that I decided to take the leap and start my own business. So started off, I do one-to-one visits at home. I run a dementia club. I do training for businesses in dementia, but also care homes. So lots of different training elements. Yes, and I'm just about to start a club in Amring.
Oh, amazing. Am I right in thinking that dementia falls under a protected characteristic? Is it the Human Rights 2010? So
Yeah,
it is actually really important for businesses and organizations to be knowledgeable on dementia.
absolutely. And it's at the moment it seems that businesses are catching on to the menopause element of
Yes.
that, but can't seem to get their head around dementia. They just seem to think that dementia's losing your keys, and that's not dementia at all. So much more than that.
Yeah, and I think it's associated a lot more with people that are perhaps retired. So maybe it's unexpected to come across it in the workplace.
Mm. The thing is that now there are estimated to be around 70,000 people who are still in the workplace because people are working much later now. So
Yeah.
they estimate there's around 70,000 people who are still at work working with dementia. And some of that is undiagnosed as well. So that's quite important.
Yeah, gosh, that's a lot. That's scary, isn't it?
Mm.
Is there a subtle difference between dementia and Alzheimer's?
So I've got a handy little chart here, if you
Oh,
can see it.
perfect.
I can send this to you, Jem.
Yeah,
So
lovely.
So if you can see the umbrella, oh, it's not very clear, is it?
It's sort of going in and out of focus
Yeah.
because you're all,
Yeah. It's basically dementia is the umbrella. So that covers all of the different dementias. And then underneath that, you've got different types. So 62% is actually Alzheimer's. And then you've got 17% is vascular dementia, 10% mixed dementia. Then you've got frontal temporal, Parkinson's disease, dementia with Lewy bodies. So there's lots of different types. There's well over 200 different types.
gosh, okay.
Mm.
And what is the age that most people who are diagnosed?
Commonly over 60. However, there are people as young as 20s now being diagnosed. Um, Vascular dementia can be a lot to do with lifestyle. So, unfortunately, nowadays we don't have the best diets. It's a lot of fast food, um, lifestyle, drinking, smoking, not exercising, that sort of thing. And that can bring on vascular dementia. So, if you have a stroke or you have any lack of oxygen to the brain, then that can bring on dementia.
So, what would be sort of the classic symptoms?
Um, so if we sort of think about Alzheimer's, for instance, then you've got some very common things that happen. Hang on, I'm just going to get another. So that will be memory loss, confusion, difficulty communicating, being anxious, and can sometimes be paranoia. So you might find if you have someone that has Alzheimer's, they might accuse people of stealing. They might become very paranoid about people in the house. Might visualize people. Then vascular dementia is memory loss. That can affect impaired judgment, decrease in the ability to plan. So sort of making, if you have a sequence of making a cup of tea, for instance, you might not be able to plan how to do that. You might lose some of the elements of it. And then lack of motivation, Lewy bodies, you get sleep problems with that, memory loss, hallucinations, seeing people that aren't there again, frequent mood swings with that, and then frontal temporal dementia, apathy, loss of motivation, empathy sort of goes. They don't there's the social graces tend to you lose those with those, and anxiety and depression, and frontal temporal dementia is what Bruce Willis has.
Right. Okay. It's quite scary because it's a long list of symptoms, and I think any one of those doesn't necessarily highlight itself as a form of dementia. It could be associated with other things. So, I mean, how easy or difficult is it to get diagnosed?
So it's better nowadays. I think you have to show sort of more than one symptom. So if, for instance, you have a loved one that is constantly repeating themselves, so not just asking where something is, but asking the same question over and over again. It may be having a 5-minute pause in between. So it might be, are we going to the shops today? And then 5 minutes later, are we going to the shops today? So it would be something like that would initially, you would think that's quite unusual. And what I always advise people to do is to keep a diary. So if you are with somebody and they're starting to do things like that, then write the date down and what happened. And then you might find that they become a little bit disorientated. They might go into the bathroom in the morning, come out, go back in, come out, go back in, which is where they're losing the ability to remember that they've been in the bathroom. So that would be my advice, to keep a diary of those sorts of things. And then you contact your GP, and then they do it's quite a simple test. So what will happen is they will be asked at the beginning of the test to remember an address. So it might be 1 Fleet Street, and they have to remember that address. And then they'll go into lots of different questions, and it'll be, who's the Prime Minister, who's the President of the United States, what day is it, lots of questions around time and space. Then they have to draw a clock and put the numbers on. And many people with dementia, I'd say look up clock drawn by dementia, because it for some reason they can't put the numbers inside the circle, so they'll go off to the right or the left. So think of that. So that's a test, and then they'll be asked for the address. So what was the address?
Yeah, 1 Fleet Street.
Yeah. And so that probably wouldn't have been something that was retained. But then after that, that's a very simple sort of way of assessing if there's something not quite right. And then they would go on, they'd have a CT scan, and that's when they will get a scan of brain slices, and it will show that there's elements of the brain where there's black space, and that black space means that part of the brain has died. So
Oh my
when
God.
people are saying, that you, you can cure dementia, you can't. It's that part of the brain is dead. You can't jumpstart it back up again. At the
Yeah.
moment, maybe in the future, but at the moment you can't.
Okay. I want to go back to that because I want to talk about, although we can't cure it, can we prevent it? But before I get back to that, in terms of making a note and writing a diary, I think that's a lot easier if you are talking about a loved one and you're obviously going to be taking care of them and you're coming from a place of genuine concern.
Yes.
I guess when we're talking about noticing things in colleagues in the workplace, that's a bit more contentious and you have to tread really sensitively because you can't be seen to self-diagnose. So, I mean, how would you go around that?
I think that this is it is a really tricky subject because it comes under the Disability Act as well.
Yeah.
So there's lots of protection now around dementia as a disease. Um, it would be, I would say, you would have to if you were close colleagues, if you're working quite closely together, I would say that you could maybe make discrete notes, but then not share that because that's like spying on
Yeah.
someone. So you wouldn't want to share that with a line manager or anything, but it would come from a place of concern. The problem you have is dementia is still very stigmatized. People do not like being diagnosed with dementia. There's a real fear factor there still. And
Yeah.
there's all of those things like if I'm still going to work. So there's two sides of this. If I'm still going to work and I think something's wrong, and my family are noticing that something is wrong, I'm going to work, but I don't want to tell anybody because I might lose my job.
Yeah.
And there's still a lot of stigma. The other side of that is, as an employer, if I'm employing a taxi driver and they are driving a taxi and they have young onset dementia, the ability for them to have an accident is extremely high, because when you think about sequencing, it's everything. It's from making a cup of tea, putting the kettle on, getting the milk, getting the tea bag, all of those things. It's the same in a car. I get into a car, I'm driving the car, I might forget how to brake, I might forget how to change gear. There's a lady called Wendy Griffiths, who was very famous on the circuit of talks around dementia, and she had dementia herself, and she couldn't turn one way. So, say for instance, she couldn't turn left, she had to do
Yeah.
everything by turning right. So, again,
Mhm.
if you're in traffic, that's really dangerous. So,
Yeah.
as an employer, if that person then has an accident, the legalities around that are huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also, it's about our social responsibility to look after people with dementia. If I'm driving a taxi, can we take me out of the taxi and put me in the back office, say, for instance, so I can take phone calls? Or there must be some other, within reason, there must be some other way that people can be supported in the workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. Employers have a duty of care to
Yeah,
ensure that they can make adjustments so that the employee feels safe,
absolutely.
respected. I guess in most instances, it would be easier. Obviously, that's quite a harsh example in terms of making those adjustments. But if you're in an office, it might be that you need to work from home more frequently, or you need a quieter space, or you need longer for, the task. So I completely agree with you. Employers need to read up on this and ensure that they do make reasonable adjustments.
Yeah. I mean, I think if at a very basic level, if you think that your brain is your control center, it controls everything you're doing. So it's at the moment, it's helping me speak. I'm moving my hands, I'm blinking, I'm breathing. One element of that control center can go down, and I might then not be able to speak, or I might not be able to raise my hands anymore. My brain would forget how to tell me to do this. It
Hmm.
might tell me, might forget to tell me to put the brake on in the car, things like that. So, Yeah, it's a big subject. It's a tricky subject, but it does need to be addressed.
Yeah. Yeah, like you say, particularly if early onset dementia is getting diagnosed and people are sort of becoming younger and younger, we're going to be seeing more of it. And it is scary when you describe all of those symptoms, when you describe the things that can happen. It is a scary diagnosis to have.
Mm, mm. It is. I mean, better so now. I mean, in times gone by, you would have been committed. They would have put you in a lunatic asylum. That's
Mm.
where, because
Yeah.
think you'd gone mad. That's what they used to say. Um, and I always urge people not to use the term suffering. Um, it's better and kinder to say living with dementia rather than suffering with dementia. That's quite an archaic term.
Okay. Okay, that's good to know. So let's go back then and talk about prevention. So we know that there's currently not a cure, but are there ways that we can either prevent ourselves from having it or slow it down at all?
So, one of the things I do with my one-to-one visits is I do. Some people call it brain gym. Some people call it um, cognitive exercises. So it's trying to use left and right brain, and it really does. It really does work in that it helps with things like so. One of the things you can lose with dementia is your peripheral vision. So I can see my hands here, but you can sometimes get quite blinkered with dementia. So we do lots of things where people are looking up, down, left, right, um, sort of work with colours, like counters, putting those into different sections. I've got a lot of logic games where you'll have a shape on a card, a picture of a shape on a card, and then they have to recreate that. So it's using all of those thinking abilities. And also, people with dementia get very isolated. So it's very much trying to keep conversation going, because if you're spending all of your time alone and you're not communicating with people, then your world is going to shrink and you will lose the ability to communicate. So it's very important to keep the dialogue going with people with dementia.
Yeah.
Like everything, we're all a little bit naughty with food and diet and exercise. So, vascular dementia can be brought on by, not vascular dementia, sorry. Um, God, I've gone blank. What's the matter with me? Sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, vascular dementia can be, brought on by stroke. So if you think you're eating a lot of processed food, you're not getting any exercise, you may be drinking, smoking, all of those things are not a great lifestyle. So
Hmm.
chances of you having a stroke are probably quite high. So it's things like making sure you get a bit of exercise. Use your brain. Don't just sit and watch telly. Um, do crosswords, word searches, anything where you're challenging your brain is
Yeah.
really good exercises. It's as important to challenge your brain as it is your body. You've got to keep on top of learning is a great thing. So either reading two books at a time, maybe a subject that's a little bit challenging, not a love story or anything, but something factual.
Yeah.
All of the brain gym games that you can get on your phone are really good for keeping your brain very agile. But yeah, lifestyle is important.
Do we know if it's hereditary?
It's not hereditary. However, you do hear of families that have many people in the same family who have had dementia, but it's not hereditary at all.
Okay. That's interesting. And the bit you were saying about it can feel quite lonely and you rely on sort of family coming round and having those conversations with you. I think that's where there's a massive gap with AI.
Mm,
If
yeah.
there could be some sort of program created because let's face it, AI is never going to get angry about the fact that you're asking them the same question 30 times.
No.
And if you could create that sort of like virtual friendship,
I
obviously,
have
great.
read this somewhere that
Is it
someone
a
has.
thing?
It is a thing, so you're ahead of the game.
Oh,
You can create an AI friend, and what they'll
yeah,
do is the more conversations you have, the more they learn about you, and then they can then start creating conversations. So
yeah,
um, it's important, and I think you know when you think about a holistic approach to dementia, you've got some people will suddenly have mood swings. I used to visit a lady and we used to go shopping, and she was such a lovely lady. She was very kind and gentle, but she would suddenly go into a rage and start swearing. And we'd be in a shop, and at the checkouts I'm trying to put stuff in the bags, and she'd start shouting. Of
mm,
course, what happens is everyone turns around and stares. No one um, helps. I mean, I always carry a card with me to say the person I'm with has dementia. Please be patient and understanding. And I show that to the
yeah,
cashier rather than in front of the person say she's got dementia. Please be kind. So
yeah,
it's about respect, but also you find that if people are having challenging behaviours. I was at something on Monday and last Monday, and there was a daughter and a mother, and the mother had dementia, and she kept repeating the same questions, and the daughter just kept huffing. And you've already asked me that, Mum, which then just made her kind of retreat a little bit.
yeah.
Um, but I mean, I'm around it all the time, so I get it, and I'm very patient with it. But it is difficult to manage.
I
Um,
think particularly if it's a loved one, because it's scary to see the person that you love sort of not being able to remember things or recall things and asking the same questions. Like there's an element of fear for the family member as well as the person that's going through it.
Absolutely. And there are ways. I mean, another lady I used to visit, she was, her and her husband were members of a walking group, and there were about 15 of them that used to go out and go for a lovely walk and then have a pub lunch. And then gradually over time, those people dropped off and they stopped inviting them. So not only was the lady I was looking after isolated, but then so was her husband. So they ended up being together all the time. Friends didn't visit anymore because they found it difficult to communicate with her. And so both their worlds then shrink. And they've got no one to talk to, they've got no one to communicate with. It's really sad when that happens. And I always say that there are ways to manage all of these things. I mean, I'm doing a talk coming up on behaviours with dementia. I firmly believe that all behaviours have a source.
Yeah.
I'm not going to just stand and shout my head off for no reason. There's got to be a reason why I'm doing that. uh,
Yeah.
so it's about trying to find the source of challenging behaviour. I'll give you an example. If you have a white bathroom with a white toilet and a white basin, and you find that your loved one, say for instance, it's a gentleman, and he keeps peeing on the floor, then you're going to get angry and say, "Oh, for Christ's sakes, why do you keep peeing on the floor?" And then all hell's going to break loose, and you're going to end up with a almighty row. Get a black toilet seat, then he'll be able to see where the toilet is.
Yeah.
Simple as that. Put some black tape around the basin so he can see where to wash his hands. It's about enabling people, not disabling people.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's all about making those adjustments to support and help them through it. So where does our charity money go? If we're going to sort of give to a dementia charity, does some of it go towards sort of that emotional support? I know we're looking at a way to cure it and all of that, but does some of it go towards helping with that loneliness?
There are, it depends who you donate to, really. I mean, the
Yeah.
Alzheimer's Society is very pro research, but also they have a huge library of information, support things. They've got a helpline. I'm an ambassador for the Alzheimer's Society, so I do dementia friends sessions.
Mm.
So they offer many things, and actually, I usually point people to their website because there's so much information on there. Just about behaviours, about how to cope, that sort of thing. There are local charities that offer support, but a lot of those are paid services. So, say, for instance, a day club that you get lunch and things, so that will be chargeable. But it's so the club I run on a Tuesday, and we'll soon be running one on a Wednesday. What we do there is we have coffee and chat. So everyone talks about if anyone's had a birthday, if anyone's been on a trip anywhere or anything, talk about what's in the news, which can sometimes get a bit controversial. We then do an exercise session, which is seated exercise, so everyone can take part. Then have a good old game of bingo. And then I've got lots of other games that we play. So it's about that engagement. It's about talking to each other. We have fun. There's lots of laughter, and it's a place where people can feel really included. And there just needs to be a bit more of that out there, to be fair.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I love a Sudoku and a puzzle. Absolutely love those. And
Me
I'm not
too.
a huge TV fan, so I'm on the right track there.
Yeah.
In terms of if you're sort of noticing symptoms and you're scared and you don't know who to talk to and you don't know what to do, like what's your advice?
So I would say at the first step, start making a note. It's very hard when you're in that zone. It's really hard to recount information yourself. So
Yeah.
just pop those little things down in the diary. Doesn't have to be. You can make notes on your phone. It doesn't have to be a paper diary. Just keep a little bit of a track, and so that you can say, okay, so we're now in September. What was happening in July? What was happening in August? Right, I think there's something wrong. So having something to look back on is really good. You can then contact the GP. However, I must just warn everyone about one element of all of this is that once you're diagnosed with dementia, you are no longer deemed to have capacity. So that means that you can't make decisions in your own life. But there are two types that you need to have. So if you are deemed not to have capacity, that's over your finances and also your healthcare. So they're called a power of attorney.
Yeah.
So you have a health power of attorney and a financial power of attorney. Now, I always say to everybody, get that done early.
You should have that done anyway, shouldn't you?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
they are two separate, and there is a small fee, isn't there, to get those papers
Yeah.
finalised.
But it is so important. So I always like to give scenarios because, otherwise people go, well, so what? I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
it's not affecting me.
I
Yeah.
had a lady who I visited daily. She had a fall. She didn't have capacity. She was diagnosed with dementia. So she went into hospital. And she was then stuck in hospital because her nephew had a financial power of attorney, but he didn't have a health power of attorney, which meant he couldn't then get her discharged into a care home because
Yeah.
he couldn't make that decision for her.
Mm.
So then what happens is you get social workers and loads of other agencies involved to then get that person in the right place. So I think she was in Worthing Hospital for about 9 weeks.
Gosh.
So obviously that's blocking a bed because
Yeah.
apart from having dementia, she's absolutely fine.
Mm.
And so it's really important to get that sorted out. You can't ask about medication. You can't, there's so many things you can't do if you don't have a health power of attorney. I would, I've got one for my mum already. My sister and I have. It's really important that you have them.
Yeah. And it's not a huge amount of money, is it?
No, no, but it's a huge amount of money if you haven't got one. So
Yeah.
if if someone hasn't got capacity and doesn't have financial power of attorney, you're in a really tricky situation, and you then have to go to court, and that can be, I think, starts around 30,000.
Oh my goodness.
So
Right. Okay. Okay. And then for those that are in the workplace, so there's two things here. One, if you're an employer, what do you recommend them doing?
I think they need to look up. I mean, I go into companies and I give them guidance around, and it's not it's not a huge fee. I have a like a consultation with them where we'll talk about environments, different little things that they can do, such as signage to make life easier for someone living with dementia. Um, and talking about those legalities around what they need to make sure they're clued up on, basically. Um, but there is stuff online,
Yeah.
but don't I would say don't read the American stuff. The Alzheimer's Society has quite a lot of information on dementia in business, so that's a good starting point. Um, but yeah, employers do really need to be aware.
Great. And then finally, if you're a colleague, a neighbor, a friend, what can we be doing? What can we be doing better?
So I think um, at a very basic level, I think we've lost kindness. We're in 2025, we're all very busy, we're all dashing around, we're on our phones, we're answering emails, we've forgotten how to talk to each other. I very rarely see my neighbours are all quite elderly, and I very rarely see them. But occasionally I'll go and knock just to see if they're okay, just to say hello. um, you can do that. You can, if you're in a queue in the supermarket and you can see someone clearly struggling, um, I will always go forward and say, can I help you? If they're struggling to put things in bags. I mean, everyone packs so quickly now.
Yeah.
It's difficult. Just being old is difficult now. Um,
Yeah.
just offer to help someone. If you see someone that's obviously distressed in some way, just go and say hello. I mean, it's a very lonely world if you have dementia, and human kindness is free, and we can all take time to be a little bit kinder. If someone in front of you in the car is driving at 10 miles an hour, they might be nervous. They might be thinking there's something wrong with them. So don't go and tailgate them and bib and carry on. Turn off, go a different way. It's just going back to basic human kindness, one person looking out for another.
Yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And this has been really informative. And I think every organization does have a duty of care to know about it, understand it, and like you say, support anyone that is living with it. Thank you so much, Leslie.
Thank you. Really good to talk to you.